Cash Out begged the judge for mercy.
I've done things in my life. I'm not perfect.
Tay-K sat cold as ice when they heard that life sentence drop.
You're young, but you're gonna have to make better choices. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm gonna sentence him to 80 years in the prison.
C-Murder still swears on his mama that these witnesses were straight capping for the cameras.
They were just making stuff up, 15 minutes of fame.
These rap cats got hit with the whole library, and their reactions in that courtroom were more wild than the crimes that put them there. Starting with this dude, K-So. In Jacksonville's drill scene, where keeping it real can cost you everything, nobody's story hit harder than Hakeem Robinson, better known in the streets as K-So. This 26-year-old spitter who ran with the ATK, Ace Top Killers crew, watched his whole world crumble in a courtroom moment that went viral faster than any of his tracks ever did. The beef that ultimately sent K-So to the pen was rooted in some real street politics that had been brewing way before social media made drill rap mainstream. The ATK-KTA Kill Them All rivalry had been heating up through diss tracks, Instagram flexing, and real bullets flying since at least 2019. At the center of this whole mess was some personal vendetta that would end up costing K-So his freedom forever. The spark that lit this powder keg happened in 2019 when K-So's stepbrother, Willie Addison, who went by Boss Goon in the streets, got smoked in a drive-by that also left K-So's pops, brother, and cousin all shot up.
I guess 2 or 3 cars pulled up on the side of us, shot inside our car over 100 times, killed my son in the front seat, shot my son in the back, in the head 3 times, shot my nephew several times, a couple more passengers in there were shot several times, numerous of times.
The pain of losing Boss Goon got even worse when rival rapper Lil Buck, real name Charles McCormick Jr., dropped a diss track straight disrespecting the dead. That response came on January 15th, 2020, in broad daylight on Merrill Road in Arlington, Jacksonville. K-So, along with his homie Leroy Whitaker, ATK Scotty, and their shooter Dominique Barner, allegedly stalked 23-year-old Lil Buck as he was leaving a job interview around 11 a.m. They caught him slipping and lit him up on the spot. An off-duty cop witnessed the whole thing and immediately gave chase, pursuing these cats until their whip crashed and 2 suspects ran up in somebody's crib, briefly holding the homeowner hostage before they gave up. The evidence against K-So was overwhelming, but nothing hit harder than when his own blood took the stand against him. In one of the most devastating moments of the trial, K-So's father stepped up as a state witness, tearfully pointing out his son as the trigger man in the surveillance footage.
Did you, when you viewed that recording, recognize the person depicted in it?
Yes.
Who is the person that was captured on the video recording shooting Charles McCormick?
My son.
Through tears, he called it the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Is cooperating in this case something that is easy for you to do?
No, this is the most hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life.
This testimony came from a plea deal where Pops avoided catching more time for his own involvement in related beef, ultimately getting sentenced to 24 months in federal prison in August 2025. The prosecution's case got even stronger when they used K-So's own bars and Instagram posts, which prosecutors argued were straight confessions and references to the bodies he caught. On July 31st, 2025, after a 6-day trial and just 3.5 hours of jury deliberation, the verdict dropped like a bomb. K-So was found guilty on all counts, first-degree murder, which carries a mandatory life sentence in Florida. As the judge announced the jury's decision, the courtroom went dead silent, and then came the moment that would be reposted across every hood Instagram page in the country. K-So looked absolutely shook hearing that guilty verdict. Homie put his hand over his mouth, took off his glasses, and was shaking his head like he couldn't believe this was really happening while sitting next to his lawyer. The weight of that moment hit different when it sunk in that he was about to do life behind the wall, since first-degree murder means mandatory life without parole in Florida. Given the first-degree murder charges, the sentence was mandatory life without parole under Florida law. Formal sentencing occurred in August 2025, sealing his fate forever. At just 26 years old, K-So will spend the rest of his days locked up, with no chance of ever touching the streets again. While K-So's fate got sealed in a single heartbreaking courtroom moment, YNW Melly's story has been a slow-burning nightmare of hearings, mistrials, and emotional breakdowns as the threat of life or even death still hangs over his head like a dark cloud. YNW Melly. Jamel Maurice Demons, better known as YNW Melly, has been caught up in a legal nightmare that seems like it'll never end. The Florida rapper has been locked down since February 2019 on charges that could cost him his life. The case that has consumed nearly a decade of Melly's young life centers around the tragic deaths of two of his day one homies and fellow YNW crew members, Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr., just 19 years old, and Anthony YNW Sackchaser Williams, 21. On October 26, 2018, what should have been a routine late-night studio session in Fort Lauderdale turned into a nightmare that would destroy multiple families and end promising young lives. According to prosecutors, after wrapping up their studio time, the crew headed out into the night, but something went terribly wrong. The state's narrative paints a chilling picture. Melly, then just 19 years old, allegedly turned on his day ones in a Jeep, shooting Thomas 8 times and Williams 12 times from the left rear passenger seat, where surveillance footage had captured him sitting earlier that evening. But the prosecution's theory goes even further. They allege that Melly and co-defendant Cortland YNW Bortland Henry didn't just catch bodies. They tried to cover it up by staging an elaborate scene near the Everglades, firing additional shots at the whip from outside to make it look like the victims had been killed in a drive-by shooting. The two then drove to Memorial Hospital Miramar, where both victims were pronounced dead. The evidence presented by prosecutors reads like something from a street movie. The shots, according to ballistics experts, came from inside the vehicle, specifically from the left rear passenger seat where Melly had been positioned. Perhaps most damning in the prosecution's case is what they claim amounts to a straight confession. Shortly after the murders, when a homie reached out to check on Melly's well-being, a message came back from his phone that simply read, "Shh, I did that."
In the context of this message, this individual is reaching out, asking if Mr. Demons is good, after he's been tagged in multiple social media posts about this drive-through. And Mr. Demons responds very succinctly, "I did that. Shh."
A month later, prosecutors say video on his phone captured him saying, "There's no regrets for the shit that I did."
No regrets for the did. That also means that. Yeah. 4:30 a.m. Never say when.
The first trial, which began in June 2023, was a straight roller coaster of emotions and legal drama. After 3 days of deliberations, the 12-member jury reported being deadlocked 3 times, with one juror potentially influencing others to prevent a unanimous guilty verdict. Judge John Murphy ultimately declared a mistrial on July 22, 2023. Throughout the proceedings, Melly's reactions in court became a source of controversy and emotional tension. On the trial's third day, June 14, 2023, he blew a kiss toward the gallery, a gesture that Leandra Phillips, mother of victim YNW Juvie, interpreted as straight disrespectful. Phillips walked out of the courtroom, later stating she wouldn't let him intimidate her because he did it. The legal battles have continued to take their toll on everyone involved. His frustration has boiled over during bond denials, with reports of him almost crashing out on his lawyers in June 2025 after another rejection following 6 years in custody. Now, in a development that has shocked fans and legal observers alike, the retrial has been postponed until January 2027, nearly 8 years after Melly's initial arrest. If found guilty of first-degree murder, Melly faces life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty, as Florida prosecutors continue to seek capital punishment. But not every rapper facing life reacts with disbelief or defiance in a murder case. Some, like Cash Out, meet their fate in a different kind of trial, one that exposes crime so disturbing it leaves the entire hip-hop community shook. Cash Out.
I've done things in my life. I'm not perfect.
John Michael Hakeem Gibson, known in the rap game as Kid Dollar H Out, experienced one of the most devastating moments in hip-hop history when his own mama and cousin got convicted alongside him in a sprawling RICO case that exposed years of systematic sexual exploitation and violence. The Atlanta rapper, who had tasted mainstream success in the early 2010s with bangers like Cashin' Out and She Twerkin', watched his career and freedom disappear in a courtroom where even his closest family members couldn't escape the long arm of the law. What made this case particularly shocking wasn't just how serious the charges were, but finding out that Gibson's music label, Pyrex Music Group LLC, had allegedly been used as a front for a sophisticated criminal enterprise centered on sex trafficking and pimping. Prosecutors described a 7-year reign of terror where Gibson and his crew controlled victims through a calculated system of manipulation, isolation, threats, and violence. The operation was methodical and cruel. Young women were lured from social media platforms with promises of modeling opportunities and music video roles, only to find themselves trapped trapped in a nightmare of coercion and abuse. The prosecution painted a picture of systematic control where victims' IDs were confiscated, they were forced to post advertisements for tricks, their earnings were withheld, and they lived in constant fear of physical harm, including beatings, being run over by vehicles, or being pistol whipped. The charges against Gibson were extensive and devastating. He was ultimately convicted on multiple counts, including rape, aggravated sodomy, 2 counts of trafficking a person for sexual servitude, violation of the Georgia RICO Act for leading the criminal enterprise across multiple counties, battery, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, pimping, pandering, keeping a place of prostitution, willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and possession of prohibited items by an inmate. Perhaps most heartbreaking was finding out Gibson's own family was down with the criminal enterprise. His mother, Linda Smith, also known as Mama Cash Out, and cousin Tyrone Taylor were co-defendants who were convicted for actively helping run the trafficking ring. Smith helped manage the money and logistics of the operation, while Taylor participated directly in the coercion and faced additional cocaine possession charges. The prosecution, led by multiple divisions working together, emphasized Gibson's complete lack of remorse throughout the proceeding. Gibson had turned down a 25-year plea deal offered by the state, choosing instead to go to trial, a decision that some legal observers called a trial penalty that led to much harsher sentencing. On July 21st, 2025, the sentencing phase delivered justice that reflected how serious these crimes were. Gibson was sentenced to 2 life sentences, one each for rape and aggravated sodomy, running concurrently, plus an additional 75 years for the remaining charges. In a moment that revealed his continued disconnection from reality, Gibson maintained his innocence during a moving courtroom statement.
I've done things in my life, I'm not perfect, but the things I've been accused of, I know that I haven't done those things.
He called the jury's verdict a wrong judgment, suggested victims were bullied into testifying.
I get the situations that people are put in when they're faced with a certain type of crime or a certain type of time, and they're bullied into this situation to put the blame on someone, or to put the blame on Cash Out, or to put the blame on someone who's at the top.
He even compared his situation to Jesus being falsely accused.
I feel like, and somebody asked me this the other day, it was like, every time I see your head high and you always smiling, because when you have that confidence, it takes me back to the Bible. When you have that confidence and you know you can be falsely accused of things, Jesus was falsely accused. A lot of the prophets were falsely accused. You don't.
Gibson must now register as a sex offender, avoid contact with victims or their families, and stay away from specific Atlanta areas like the Fulton Industrial Boulevard corridor. Effectively, this means Gibson, now 34, will spend the rest of his life behind bars without realistic parole prospects. And while Cash Out's downfall was marked by a chilling lack of remorse, Tay K's sentencing came with a personal betrayal in the courtroom, one that made the sting of an 80-year prison term even sharper. Tay K.
You're young, but you're gonna have to make better choices. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm gonna sentence him to 80 years in the prison, give him credit for any time served.
Few suburban kids turned street have faced such devastating betrayal as Tamor Trayvon McIntyre, better known in the trap scene as Tay K. When his own girl flipped and testified against him in court, it wasn't just about catching a body. It was about learning that even your day one can leave you hanging when the feds come knocking. The Texas spitter, who had blown up off the race while dodging the law, discovered that in the streets and in court, loyalty is just a word when life sentences are on the table. The case that would ultimately have Tay K doing football numbers started with what looked like a regular hustle gone wrong on April 23, 2017, when 23-year-old photographer Mark Anthony Saldivar got set up in San Antonio. What made this lick particularly tragic was that Saldivar thought he was just pulling up for a legit photo shoot that had been arranged through the gram. At the time of the crime, Tay K was already on the run, having cut his ankle monitor and bounced from house arrest related to his earlier 2016 case. He was just 16 years old, but his moves would prove to have consequences that would keep him locked up until he's an old head. The play was simple, but went left quick. Tay K orchestrated the fake photo shoot with Saldivar via Instagram, planning to jack him for his expensive camera equipment. The whip carrying the crew, driven by Tay K's shorty Joanna Reyes and containing McIntyre, Saldivar, and 2 other young bulls, Jalen Bell and Jeremiah Rodriguez, turned into a mobile crime scene that would end in bloodshed. At a red light near a Chick-fil-A on North McCulloch Avenue, the lick went into motion when Tay K pulled the blicky on Saldivar, demanding his backpack. When Saldivar wasn't trying to give it up, things escalated to violence violence real quick. The crew started beating on him, pistol whipping him before pushing him out the car. In a desperate move to protect his equipment, Saldivar jumped on the hood of the vehicle. That's when Tay K made the decision that would haunt him forever. He leaned out the door and let it rip, hitting Saldivar, who fell to the pavement and later died from his wounds. The crew sped off, but their problems were just beginning. The aftermath revealed how pointless the whole thing was. After going through Saldivar's belongings in a nearby Mexican restaurant parking lot, they found only $10. They ditched the backpack, destroying evidence and any chance of keeping it low-key. McIntyre got knocked in June 2017 in New Jersey after a nationwide manhunt, during which he had dropped his viral track, The Race, flexing about being a fugitive. He caught the indictment for this second body in November 2019, while already locked up doing time for his earlier conviction. The most devastating testimony came on day 5 of the trial, when Joanna Reyes, McIntyre's girl at the time of the crime, took the stand as a key witness for the prosecution. Facing her own capital murder charge initially, which could have meant life behind the wall, she accepted a plea deal for the lesser charge of tampering with evidence, agreeing to 10 years of probation in exchange for snitching. She explained that she didn't report the crime immediately because she was scared, as Tay K had allegedly threatened to smoke her and her family if she opened her mouth. In her emotional testimony, Reyes broke down how they picked up Saldivar for the photo shoot, the sudden robbery at the light, the beating, and Tay K pointing the gun at her demanding she shake Saldivar off the hood. She witnessed Tay K lean out and blast Saldivar directly.
Tay K opened the door and shot him.
On April 14th, 2025, the jury found McIntyre guilty of the lesser charge of murder rather than capital murder, avoiding the automatic life without parole penalty.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, not guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment. We, the jury, find the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, guilty of the lesser included offense of murder.
The sentencing phase featured testimony about McIntyre's rough upbringing, with a psychologist and his sister presenting evidence of his exposure to drug abuse, violence, prostitution, and abusive foster care to argue for leniency. However, prosecutors emphasized the brutality of the crime and its impact on the victim's family. On April 15th, 2025, the jury assessed an 80-year prison term with no fine, which Judge Boyd formally read in court.
It states that we unanimously find that the defendant, Tamar McIntyre, did not cause the death of Anthony Saldivar under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from adequate cause. It states that punishment to be assessed at 80 years in the prison, and there is no fine.
The 80-year bid runs concurrently with his prior 55-year sentence from his 2019 conviction for the 2016 murder of Ethan Walker during a Mansfield home invasion, plus concurrent 30, and 13-year terms for aggravated robberies. If he makes parole at the earliest opportunity, he could potentially walk free around age 64 in 2065. But approval isn't guaranteed and depends on his behavior and the parole board's decisions. Yet, betrayal in the courtroom isn't always the main event. Sometimes the sheer number of victims and the brutality of the crimes speak louder than any emotional outburst. That was the situation for Kalen Walker, whose sentencing left him staring down what amounts to a life sentence behind bars. Kalen Walker.
And I still to this day cannot forgive myself for freezing in that moment, but I know that I told him no.
And no matter how I told him that it was hurting me, he just told me to shut up.
Of Kalen Rashe Walker represents one of the most comprehensive takedowns of a celebrity predator in recent hip-hop history. The actor and rapper, who had parlayed his role in the 2018 film Superfly into a promising entertainment career, found himself facing the rest of his life locked up after a jury convicted him of systematically preying on young women and aspiring models through his celebrity status. Walker's crimes spanned years and involved over 30 women who came forward with accusations that began surfacing in 2018. The pattern was consistent and calculated. Walker used his celebrity status to finesse victims, primarily aspiring models and young women, via social media platforms like Instagram and Twitter, promising them professional opportunities such as roles in music videos, modeling gigs, or introductions to high-profile figures like Drake. The assaults, which dated back to at least 2013, involved forcible rape, statutory rape, and rape by intoxication, with some victims as young as 16. The trial, which began in March 2022 in Van Nuys Superior Court in Los Angeles, lasted several weeks and exposed the dark side of how clout and celebrity status can be weaponized. Deputy District Attorney Yasmin Fargasimi argued that Walker was a serial predator who preyed on vulnerable women, urging jurors to see his dark side beyond his public persona. The prosecution's case was built on the brave testimony of multiple victims who provided emotional and detailed accounts of their experiences.
I was a victim of a sexual assault crime that Kaylin Walker was convicted of. Yes, I had a police report. Yes, I had a rape kit. Yes, I had matching DNA evidence. And yes, I was subpoenaed to come into court and testify on March 11th and 12th of 2022.
They described how they were isolated, threatened, or physically overpowered by Walker. The trial highlighted the role of social media in facilitating these crimes, with evidence including direct messages and posts used to contact and manipulate victims. Walker's defense team, led by attorney Andrew Brettler, attempted to portray some encounters as consensual and questioned the victim's credibility based on post-assault communications or delays in reporting. Walker himself didn't testify, but had previously denied the allegations in public interviews, claiming they were fabricated and that he was innocent, stating his life was forever affected.
I am innocent until proven guilty, not guilty till proven innocent. Y'all gotta be fair. You cannot keep doing this. Y'all can't keep doing this. It's not cool. Just wait till after my trial.
One noteworthy aspect of the trial was the public support from singer Kehlani, who used her social media platform to amplify awareness of the case and support the victims during the proceedings.
I did not forget who tore down victims of sexual assault when this came out. I did not forget what bloggers and what blogs and what platforms felt like they had to play neutral and give a rapist a platform for the sake of clicks and views when this came out.
After several days of deliberation, the jury delivered a mixed verdict on April 18, 2022. Walker was convicted on 9 counts involving 10 victims, including 3 counts of forcible rape, 1 count of assault to commit oral copulation, 2 counts of forcible rape of a minor aged 14 or older, 2 counts of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, and 1 count of rape by intoxication. He was acquitted on 3 charges, 2 counts of forcible rape and 1 count of forcible digital penetration, related to 3 other alleged victims. Following the conviction, Walker was immediately taken into custody, and his lawyer announced plans to appeal, citing potential issues with evidence and jury instructions. The sentencing hearing on October 17, 2022, before Judge Joseph Brandolino was an emotionally charged affair that laid bare the lasting impact of Walker's crimes. Judge Brandolino imposed a term of 50 years to life in state prison, with the sentences for multiple counts ordered to run consecutively due to the sophisticated and violent nature of the crimes. This sentencing structure means that Walker, who was 27 at the time, could spend the rest of his life behind bars, though he would be eligible for parole after serving at least 50 years, potentially in his late 70s, accounting for any good behavior credits under California law. Walker showed no visible reaction as the sentence was read aloud in court, remaining stoic according to eyewitness reports. He did not make a statement during the hearing, a decision that may have reflected advice from his legal team or his own unwillingness to accept responsibility for his actions. But Walker wasn't the only one whose day in court ended with the loss of his freedom. Next up is a Chicago drill rapper whose conviction all but guaranteed he'll spend the rest of his life in prison, even before the judge says the words. Muwop. Marcus Muwop Smart represents one of the most high-profile convictions to emerge from Chicago's deadly drill rap scene. But his story is unique in that while his fate has been sealed by a jury, he continues to wait for the formal pronouncement of what everyone knows will be a life sentence. The 24-year-old spitter, associated with the notorious O-Block gang, experienced the devastating blow of conviction but has yet to face the final moment when a judge officially condemns him to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The case that ended Muwop's freedom centers around the 2020 murder of fellow rapper Carlton Weekly, better known as FBG Duck, a killing that stemmed from one of Chicago's most violent and well-documented gang beefs. The O-Block faction of the Black Disciples, aligned with rappers like Lil Durk and the late King Von, had been engaged in a deadly feud with FBG Duck's Tocqueville faction of the Gangster Disciples. This wasn't just rap beef, it was real street politics that had already claimed multiple lives and would continue to do so. On August 4th, 2020, around 4:26 p.m., the violence reached its peak when FBG Duck was shopping with his girl in Chicago's upscale Gold Coast neighborhood. 4 masked shooters emerged from 2 whips, a black Ford Fusion and a silver Chrysler 300, and opened fire in broad daylight. Duck caught multiple shots to the chest, pelvis, and neck, collapsing on the sidewalk as his girl was wounded in the hand and a bystander was also hit. The shooters let off at least 38 rounds before speeding off, demonstrating the level of preparation and intent that went into the assassination. More footage showed the Chrysler pulling up to O-Block with police in pursuit. Duck was pronounced dead at Northwestern Memorial Hospital shortly after, marking another tragic milestone in Chicago's ongoing cycle of gang violence. Prosecutors allege that the hit was premeditated, with King Von having put a $100,000 bounty on Duck's head. Social media posts from O-Block members celebrated the killing afterward.
Like everything like that, I don't know. All I know, or rest in peace.
It turns out that they were arrested at a private hangar, which is crazy because no regular O-Block gang member could afford to charter a private jet, and there's speculation that Lil Durk could be roped into the case at some point.
Everybody arrest video coming out from when they got arrested for this Duck case.
Yeah.
They ain't show Muwop or C Murders have it. Them boys got snatched at the airport on the...
Muwop's specific role in the conspiracy was as one of the shooters and a key planner in the racketeering scheme. Evidence against him included cell phone data placing him near the scene, video footage linking him to the vehicles used, and his associations with the other defendants. The federal trial, which began in late 2023 after lengthy jury selection, concluded on January 17, 2024, with a jury finding all 6 defendants guilty after just 2 days of deliberations. Muwop was convicted on 5 counts, including murder in aid of racketeering and conspiracy, but acquitted on 2 lesser firearms charges. The convictions carry a mandatory sentence of life in federal prison without parole. However, what makes Muwop's case unique among the stories we're covering today is that while his conviction is final, his sentencing has been repeatedly delayed and is currently scheduled for September 18, 2025. The mandatory life sentence without parole means that barring any unforeseen changes, such as appeals or further postponements, he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. When that sentencing finally occurs in September 2025, it will mark the official end of Muwop's freedom and any remaining hope for a different future. Until then, he exists in a legal purgatory where his fate is sealed but not yet officially pronounced. Surprisingly, Muwop reached out to a family member after the guilty verdict to assure them that he would be coming home, but it's highly unlikely. While Muwop sits in limbo waiting for his sentence to be officially read, another rapper has already faced the gavel and chose to meet it with a calm, almost resigned acceptance. Casanova.
Hell, look, you don't want to come here, I'm telling you. You don't want to come here, trust me.
Caswell Sr., known to hip-hop fans as Casanova, exemplified a unique type of courtroom composure when faced with his federal sentencing. The Brooklyn artist chose to face his fate with a stoic acceptance that would define his approach to a devastating 15-year prison sentence. Casanova's downfall came through his leadership role in the untouchable Gorilla Stone Nation Bloods gang, a violent street organization that prosecutors described as one of the most organized and dangerous in New York. In December 2020, he was indicted alongside 17 other alleged gang members on charges including racketeering conspiracy, narcotics conspiracy, firearms offenses, fraud, and acts of violence. The gang was responsible for crimes dating back to 2004, including a daytime murder of a 15-year-old in Poughkeepsie, multiple attempted murders, shootings, a gunpoint drug-related robbery, and brutal slashings. While Casanova himself wasn't charged with murder, his admitted acts painted a picture of a man deeply embedded in violent criminal enterprise. The specific crimes Casanova copped to included firing a gun during a gambling dispute at a Miami house party on July 5th, 2020, which seriously injured a victim and sparked a shootout. He also participated in a violent robbery at a Manhattan diner on August 5th, 2018, where a victim was put in a headlock, rendered unconscious, and had their cell phone stolen. Additionally, he conspired to traffic between 100 and 400 kilograms of weed. Casanova surrendered to authorities in December 2020 and remained in custody throughout the legal proceedings. He pleaded guilty on May 11th, 2022, to 1 count of racketeering conspiracy and 1 count of narcotics conspiracy, facing up to 60 years in prison. His defense argued that he had begun distancing himself from the gang as his music career grew, and that he was not deeply involved in daily operations. Prosecutors countered this narrative forcefully, arguing that his celebrity status had actually amplified the gang's recruitment and expansion, calling him a high-profile leader and magnet for gang violence. On June 27, 2023, U.S. District Judge Philip M. Halpern sentenced Casanova to 188 months, 15 years and 8 months in prison. However, shortly after the sentence was handed down, he posted a message on social media that revealed his mindset. Might die here, but always remember, what's gangsta cause this jail ain't gangsta at all. Hope you young beat the odds, the caption read. Casanova's stoic acceptance stood in stark contrast to the cold, unflinching reaction of the Memphis rapper who pulled the trigger in one of hip-hop's most shocking murders. Straight drop.
Mr. Johnson, the jury having found you guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and convicted felon in possession of a firearm. As the 13th juror, I affirm this verdict. As to the first-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison.
Justin Johnson, better known in the Memphis street scene as Straight Drop, kept it 100% ice cold when that gavel came down with a life sentence for bodying beloved rapper Young Dolph. This suburban cat-turned-street legend showed zero emotion when the judge basically told him he'd never see the outside world again. The whole situation that destroyed Johnson's freedom and had the Memphis rap game shook centered around the November 17, 2021, assassination of Adolph Thornton Jr., better known as Young Dolph, who got lit up with 22 rounds while he was just trying to grab some cookies at Makeda's homemade butter cookies. The whole hit went down in broad daylight and had the culture completely rattled because Dolph was real respected and was actually putting cats on in the community. Prosecutors laid out how this whole beef stemmed from some long-standing tension between Dolph's Paper Route Empire crew and Yo Gotti's collective music group, CMG. Word was that Anthony Big Jook Mims, Yo Gotti's blood brother who ended up getting smoked himself in January 2024, had put a $100,000 bag on Dolph's head, with Hernandez Govan orchestrating the whole play and Johnson plus Cornelius Smith being the triggermen who actually pulled up. Johnson and Smith supposedly caught Dolph slipping outside the cookie spot, then dipped in a stolen white Mercedes-Benz after they laid him down. The evidence package was stacked with surveillance footage from the scene. Cell records showing Johnson, Smith, and Big Jook were all on the jack right after the murder, plus photos and videos putting Johnson in the whip before and after the incident. Johnson's trial kicked off September 23, 2024, in Shelby County Criminal Court and ran for 4 days with an outside jury because they had to switch up the venue due to all the pre-trial drama. The state's whole case was built around Smith's testimony, where he kept it a buck about participating in the shooting, pointed himself and Johnson out in the surveillance footage, and broke down how Govan paired them up for the job on the day of the murder, which happened to be Smith's daughter's birthday. When they pressed Smith on cross-examination, he admitted he was feeling some type of way about the whole situation and revealed he got played on the payment, only receiving $800 while Johnson allegedly got hooked up with whips and fresh gear to boost his rap career. On September 26, 2024, the jury came back with guilty verdicts on everything: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and being a convicted felon with a strap. He immediately caught that life bid for the murder charge. What made Johnson's reaction stand out was how he stayed completely unfazed. Johnson kept his poker face completely intact in that courtroom as the verdict and life sentence got read, staying stone cold throughout the whole process. This icy demeanor had everybody in the courtroom shook because they expected some kind of reaction to catching a sentence that devastating. But his lawyer later said Johnson was actually torn up by the outcome and they were planning to appeal. Right after the verdict dropped, Johnson showed his true colors weren't as calm as they seemed. He dropped a message on his Instagram stories that really showed where his head was at with that street mentality. These taking criminal responsibility. I'm taking street responsibility regardless. I'm forever the biggest. They can throw away the keys before I ever eat the cheese. This post revealed his true mindset, one of defiance rather than remorse, and a commitment to street values even in the face of life imprisonment. Johnson's life sentence ensures he will spend his remaining years reflecting on a crime that gained him nothing but notoriety and cost him everything. Straight Drop's stone-faced silence might have unsettled the courtroom, but for A.R. Ab, his visible defiance may have cost him decades of his life. A.R. Ab.
During the sentencing, A.R. Ab's sentencing, the judge said, "Oh, I see how you're giving me dirty looks and I see the scowl on your face and blah, blah." 45 years.
Abdul Ibrahim West, known throughout Philadelphia's underground rap scene as A.R. Ab, experienced one of the most dramatic suburban-to-prison pipeline moments in hip-hop history when his defiant attitude during sentencing allegedly influenced a federal judge to drop a devastating 45-year prison term. The Philadelphia rapper, who had built his reputation through underground mixtapes and high-profile beefs in the suburbs, learned the hard way that throwing shade in a federal courtroom can have consequences that'll keep you locked down for life. A.R.A.B.'s downfall came through his leadership role in the original Block Hustlers, OBH, a crew that operated both as a rap collective and a serious drug trafficking organization moving weight throughout the suburbs. The federal indictment painted a picture of a sophisticated operation that was pushing major product from at least March 2017 to June 2018, importing and distributing serious amounts of cocaine, crack, meth, and heroin across Philadelphia. The operation was marked by extreme violence, with A.R. Ab accused of ordering the hit on a former associate, RJ, whom he suspected of being disloyal disloyal, resulting in RJ getting sprayed up and bodied. Authorities used the rapper's own bars, social media posts, and videos as evidence, where he was bragging about putting fear in cats, violence, and his authority within OBH to intimidate ops and maintain control. Surveillance, undercover drug buys, and raids on OBH properties yielded serious seizures: 10 kilograms of white, nearly 6 pounds of crystal, heroin, crack, and over $20,000 in cash. The crew used fear and intimidation tactics, including beatings and shootings, to protect their territory and operations, which were connected to multiple bodies and acts of violence. The trial concluded with ARAB's conviction on November 19, 2019, along with co-defendants Jamal Blanding, Jamil Hickson, and Hans Gadsden on charges of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, possession with intent to distribute, and distribution of cocaine, crack, and meth. Several other co-defendants had already copped pleas before trial, and ultimately all 9 cats who got indicted were either convicted or reached plea agreements. While waiting for sentencing in 2020, Arkansas, AB reportedly got stabbed up in prison, leaving him in serious condition at the time. On April 15, 2021, U.S. District Judge Michael M. Bailson hit the then 38-year-old ARAB with 45 years in prison, followed by 10 years of supervised release and a $5,000 fine. This sentence basically means ARAB will likely spend the rest of his life locked up, given how the federal system works and his age when he caught the sentence. The sentencing hearing became legendary in hip-hop circles because of ARAB's reaction and how the judge responded. During the proceedings, ARAB denied any involvement in the crimes, addressing the court to maintain his innocence. However, reports indicate that his attitude played a major role in the harsh penalty he received. According to multiple sources, Arkansas, AB allegedly scowled and gave dirty looks to the judge, which some observers claimed influenced the judge to impose a stiffer sentence for antisocial behavior.
The judge, before he announces the sentence, says, "Young man, you've been sitting in my courtroom listening to the statements of the victims, listening to the prosecutor discuss your crimes, and the entire time you've had your hands folded like this. And the entire time you've been dismissive and jeering and snickering and scoffing."
And because of the rapper's attitude, the judge decided to throw the whole book at him.
"You don't look contrite. You don't look like you respect this process. I have the ability here today to give you a range of sentences. It could be anywhere from, here to 45. And what I'm gonna do, based in part on your behavior in this courtroom today I'm giving you the max."
As U.S. Marshals prepared to cuff him up and take him away, ARAB reacted defiantly, declaring, "I'm not done fighting this," signaling his intent to appeal. This final show of defiance capped off a sentencing hearing that many in the hip-hop community would remember as a cautionary tale about keeping your cool in the courtroom. And while ARAB's sentence hinged partly on courtroom behavior, C. Murder's case has become a 2-decade battle over whether the verdict itself was ever legitimate. C. Murder.
There were a couple of witnesses who identified you as the shooter. So what about those witnesses?
Corey Miller, known to millions of fans as C. Murder, has become one of hip-hop's most controversial figures, not because of his music, but because of a murder conviction that has divided opinion for over a decade. The former No Limit record star, brother of Master P, has maintained his innocence while serving a life sentence that hinged on a non-unanimous jury verdict, a legal standard that has since been declared unconstitutional, adding another layer of complexity to his ongoing fight for freedom. The case that destroyed C. Murder's life began on January 12, 2002, at the now-closed Platinum Club in Harvey, Louisiana, where a brawl erupted during what should have been a routine club appearance. During the chaos, 16-year-old Steve Thomas, ironically a fan of C. Murder's music, was beaten by a group of people and fatally shot once in the chest at close range. C. Murder was accused of being the shooter, though he has consistently maintained his innocence, claiming he was not involved in the fight or the killing. Witnesses initially identified C. Murder as the perpetrator, but several later recanted, alleging police coercion and pressure from detectives to lie during the investigation. C. Murder was arrested shortly after the incident while already facing unrelated charges. The case went through multiple trials in what became a legal odyssey spanning years. An initial 2003 conviction for second-degree murder was overturned in 2006 by the Louisiana Supreme Court, which ruled that prosecutors had improperly withheld criminal background information about witnesses from the defense. This ruling gave C. Murder and his supporters hope that justice might ultimately prevail. C. Murder was retried in 2006 2009 in Jefferson Parish, in proceedings that would prove to be both controversial and final. The trial featured chaotic jury deliberations that lasted over 13 hours across 2 days, with the jury initially deadlocked before reaching a 10-2 guilty verdict for second-degree murder, a non-unanimous decision allowed under Louisiana law at the time. The trial also featured testimony from witnesses who claimed to have seen C. Murder fire the shot, though one later admitted in 2018 to being tricked by detectives into identifying him. Another key witness recanted, saying police forced him to lie or face unrelated charges. According to C. Murder, the witnesses were clout chasing and making things up on the go.
They were just making stuff up, 15 minutes of fame. That night of the shoot, nobody mentioned my name at all.
Right.
All these people know me, they know my face,
right.
They know who I am. If that would have been me, I shot this dude, they'd have told them people as soon as they walked in the door that I did.
C. Murder was in custody throughout the trial, having pleaded no contest to 2 unrelated attempted murder counts from a 2001 Baton Rouge nightclub incident. The trial concluded on August 11, 2009, with the guilty verdict, and C. Murder was sentenced on August 14, 2009, to mandatory life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Reports from the courtroom indicate C. Murder showed no visible emotion as the verdict was read. However, his family reacted strongly. His sister, Germany C. Murder, was heard screaming outside the courthouse in protest of the outcome. In June 2025, Master P publicly urged President Donald Trump and Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry to review the case and grant clemency or a pardon on Juneteenth, emphasizing recanted testimonies and perceived injustices. C. Murder himself broke his silence on potential release in a January 2025 video interview, expressing hope amid ongoing efforts. During his incarceration, C. Murder has protested prison conditions through hunger strikes. In August 2021, he staged one at Elaine Hunt Correctional Center to draw attention to medical neglect and poor treatment of inmates. He repeated this in early 2023, claiming inhumane conditions, including lack of proper health care, which caused his health to decline significantly. He reportedly passed out during the strike. C. Murder's fight is about overturning a life sentence, but in Lil Durk's case, the fight is about avoiding one altogether, as he stares down charges that could lock him away forever. Lil Durk. Dirk Derrick Banks, known worldwide as Lil Durk, experienced one of the most dramatic arrests in hip-hop history when federal agents apprehended him near Miami International Airport while allegedly attempting to flee the country on international flights. Lil Durk was arrested on October 17, 2024, near Miami International Airport while allegedly attempting to board international flights, including to Italy and possibly Dubai. This arrest stems from federal charges related to a murder-for-hire conspiracy plot targeting rival rapper Quando Rondo, real name Tikion Terrell Bowman, in retaliation for the November 6, 2020 killing of King Von, Davon Bennett, a close associate and fellow OTF, only the family member. King Von was shot and killed during a confrontation in Atlanta involving Quando Rondo's crew, specifically by an associate named Timothy Leaks, Lil Tim. Prosecutors alleged that Durk placed a bounty on Quando Rondo's life following Von's death and funded a hit squad through OTF-related finances to carry out the assassination. The plot culminated on August 19, 2022, when 5 alleged OTF members and associates traveled from Chicago to Los Angeles, reportedly stalking Quando Rondo for hours using 2 vehicles before ambushing his car at a gas station near the Beverly Center Mall. The attackers fired at least 18 rounds, including from a machine gun, but missed Quando Rondo and instead killed his cousin, Xavier Robinson, age 24, who was in the vehicle. Evidence cited includes bank and flight records showing coordination. An OTF associate paid for the group's flights and hotel using a credit card in Durk's name, with Durk allegedly instructing, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me." Durk himself flew to California on a private jet the same day with co-defendant Kevin London Grant, who bought ski masks for the group. Durk faces 3 federal charges: conspiracy, use of interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, and using, carrying, and discharging firearms, including a machine gun, in furtherance of a crime of violence resulting in death. OTF is described in court documents as not just a music collective formed by Durk in 2010, but an association in fact that engaged in violence, including murders and assaults, at Durk's direction to maintain status and settle feuds. Co-defendants include Kevin London Grant, 28, aka Cuz or Vonnie, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, 33, aka Didi, Keith Jones, 33, aka Flacca, David Brian Lindsay, 33, aka Brown Ayez, and Asa Houston, 36, aka Boogie, all of whom are in custody. Multiple bail requests have been rejected, including in May 2025 and June 2025, with judges citing Durk as a flight risk based on his pre-arrest travel attempts, jail calls where he allegedly violated rules by discussing the case improperly and the severity of the charges. One ruling highlighted it was no coincidence he booked flights abroad right after co-defendants' arrests. As of August 10, 2025, the case is ongoing, with the trial scheduled to begin on October 14, 2025, in U.S. District Court in Los Angeles, postponed from an original January 7, 2025, date after agreement between prosecutors and defense. Durk pleaded not guilty during his arraignment on November 14, 2024. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in federal prison, though prosecutors announced in June 2025 that they would not seek the death penalty. And if Durk's trial will decide his fate, Rondo Number 9 already knows his, a decades-long sentence handed down when he was still a teenager, ending the peak years of his life before they began. Rondo Number 9. Clint Massey, known in Chicago's drill rap scene as Rondo Number 9, experienced the devastating moment when a judge handed down a 39-year sentence that would consume the prime years of his life for a crime that began with a simple case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The tragic incident that destroyed multiple lives occurred on February 22, 2014, around 4 a.m., when 28-year-old Javon Boyd, a livery cab driver, was sitting in his parked car near 38th Street and Princeton Avenue in Chicago's Wentworth Gardens housing complex, simply waiting to pick up a passenger. Rondo, then just 17 years old, and his accomplice Courtney Ely, then 19, known as rapper C-Day, were part of a 3-car entourage driving through the area following a night that had already been marked by violence. Earlier that evening, the group had attended a party where an altercation occurred, including gunshots fired at them, prompting them to seek revenge in what they considered rival gang territory. Rondo and C-Day were affiliated with OTF. According to prosecutors, after their group made a U-turn in the area, Rondo and C-Day approached Boyd's car on foot. In what would prove to be a fatal case of mistaken identity, they opened the passenger side door and unleashed a hail of gunfire. The attack was brutal and overwhelming. They fired 7 shots into the vehicle, with Boyd hit multiple times, including twice in the back, 3 times in the leg, and in the chest. Despite his severe injuries, Boyd managed to drive a short distance before crashing into another parked car. He was rushed to John H. Stroger Jr. Hospital, but was pronounced dead about 2 hours later, becoming another victim of Chicago's cycle of gang violence. The shooting was captured on Chicago Housing Authority surveillance video, which showed the car's movements, 2 figures approaching, one in a striped tracksuit matching Rondo's clothing, a muzzle flash, and the getaway. This video evidence would prove crucial in identifying and convicting the perpetrators. Additional evidence included C-Day dropping his iPhone at the scene and his fingerprint being found on the passenger side window. Rondo and C-Day were arrested shortly after the shooting on March 9th and charged with first-degree murder. The joint jury trial for Rondo and C-Day took place in Cook County Criminal Court in early 2016. The trial was marked by several dramatic moments, including an outburst from Boyd's family when the surveillance video was played. On March 11, 2016, the jury found both defendants guilty of first-degree murder. C-Day was sentenced first to 38 years on May 9, 2016. Rondo received 39 years on July 5, 2016. Rondo appealed his conviction in 2019, claiming ineffective assistance of counsel for not aggressively arguing that C-Day was the sole shooter, improper hearsay evidence about his clothing, mistrial denial over the family outburst, and procedural errors in the witness hearing. The Illinois Appellate Court affirmed the conviction, finding overwhelming evidence against him and no prejudice from the issues raised. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.